Hello, Kyle. We have yet to meet in person, but I know you're one of my classmates because you're posting on this forum and therefore you get a video response. I have to say, I really appreciate a lot of what you have to say about what differentiated instruction is to you and what it means in your own words. Um, I was especially intrigued by the idea of the Science Olympics that you brought up when you were referring to shaking up the classroom, and I'm intrigued by it because as a teacher with an English specialization, English teachers have a fair amount of flexibility in how it is that they reach their learning outcomes. And I've been kind of curious as to how teachers in more content-driven courses would approach this idea of differentiated instruction and personalized learning when everything is really prescribed and it's laid out in such a solid way that it's difficult to sort of see how people would be a little bit more innovative with the way that they approach it. So I'd like to hear more about your Science Olympics if you get the opportunity. Um, and one of the other things that I really appreciated in your post was the advice that you gave the novice teacher to plan for students to have multiple ways of expressing their knowledge. And I think that's so important to recognize. And to share a little bit of what happened on my practicum, one of the assignments that I put together for the very end of a unit on Macbeth was this character analysis, which seems fairly traditional, but what I allowed for, I essentially put a rubric together. I gave the criteria that each student had to meet, but I left it entirely open as to how it was they wanted to approach the assignment. It was an incredible amount of work to try and come up with a rubric that could cover all sorts of creative endeavors. I was up like 3 o'clock in the morning a few nights trying to figure out how it was that I was actually going to assess this, which also kind of ties into the points that you brought up about the difficulty of assessing and personalizing assessment. In the end, though, I have to say that it was worth it because I ended up getting these amazing products from these kids. And not only was the assignment really fun to mark, it also brought up the marks of a lot of students who were struggling writers. And a lot of English, of course, if you're, assigning essay after essay, then those students are going to kind of lag behind if they don't get the attention that they deserve. So when they were given an assignment where it was quite possible that they could do a painting and then just have a conversation with me about it to make sure that I knew that they were hitting the key points, then all of a sudden, a different avenue of expression was really opened up to them in an English class, and it was really awesome to see how they took to it. So that was kind of one of the things that I thought went really well in my practicum, was the ability to sort of see the multiple ways of expressing knowledge in those students. It was a lot of work, and I think that, I mean, I like to think that a lot of teachers are really going to live for their job. But at the same time, I mean, we have to be realistic. And, I'm a particularly idealistic person in some ways. I went into teaching because I have some idealistic notions. I'm not going to lie about that. But I think that, if I had to put in that much energy for absolutely every assignment that I do, then I would burn out pretty quickly, and I think that a lot of people would probably be in the same boat. So I think there has to be more of a conversation about how it is that you can assess assignments to allow for those multiple expressions of knowledge. And one of the other things that you mentioned, I'm actually going to read out the quote here. I feel that differentiating instruction begins before the students even begin to investigate a topic. Through active pre-assessment of prior knowledge so that appropriate planning can be made. Ooh, reading this horribly, sorry. By doing this, the teacher can then go into the classroom knowing where the students' levels of understanding are and where their strengths, challenges, and interests lie so that learning can be optimized for each student. I think that's great. I really do. But I also am curious as to how you think that would happen. And that's not to try and negate the idea, but it's more, I don't know if you're thinking that that's something that you feel you can accomplish within, the time frame of a class as well as carrying on with the curriculum, or whether or not you'd be relying on other teachers that have had those students before and know a little bit about what it is that they respond to. I'm just kind of curious as to how you would picture that. And for me, you know, my when I read that, I was thinking, okay, well, if you're relying on other sources of information, if you're relying on other teachers who have had or taught these students, and you're relying on their depiction of what these students react to and respond to, then like that I think you sort of have to take with a grain of salt, because some teachers may view a student very differently than you do as soon as they get into your class. But yeah, I was just kind of wondering if you could maybe expand on that at some point. Or we could talk about it more when we actually meet. Who knows? I don't know. But I would, yeah, those are the two things that I'm kind of curious about. How you think the best way of approaching, you know, building those relationships and understanding where a student is at. What is the best way to do that? And also I want to hear more about your Science Olympics as well. But yeah, so those are my 2 cents that I was going to throw in. So there you go.